Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers at SF DocFest. For those of you that have attended the festival before, you know that for the last 23 years, we've been bringing films from around the world, documentaries that are just cool, irreverent, or just crazy. And we love music documentaries. So this really wonderful doc you just saw, Scream My Blood, just fits the bill of like everything that we think SF DocFest is. And we're lucky enough to have directors Nathan and Eric here, or Nate and Eric here. So welcome, guys.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Exactly. um, Maybe a good place to start is that, what was the kind of catalyst for the idea of the documentary? And, were you already, fans of Gogol Bordello or Eugene before starting it?
Yeah, I'll start. The impetus, the beginning of this documentary started over 20 years ago when Gogol Bordello was first sort of forming and playing their first early gigs in New York City. Eugene had put together a band of musicians that were playing on like the wedding circuit and in funky sort of supper club bars, and he pulled together sort of this crew of immigrants from all over the world to play in his band. And I was at that time shooting a lot of concerts, bringing a camera into venues, trying to get footage of bands, sort of documenting the music scene at the time and looking for bands to collaborate with for music videos. And I saw Gogol Bordello maybe 2002 for the first time, 2001, 2002, and they just absolutely blew my mind. So I started shooting footage of them, knowing that it would, knowing that it was great footage, but also hoping to put together like a music video or collaborate with them in some way. And I gave that footage, I cut something together and gave that to Eugene, and he liked it. He knew who I was already because we had mutual friends sort of on the scene. And we just started kind of collaborating, when he needed something shot or if there was an opportunity to tour with them or, make a video, that kind of thing. I worked with them for many years, 2 decades, just off and on again, and collecting footage that, you see in the documentary. So the footage was sort of an outgrowth of that ongoing collaboration. And when it came time to edit that video and came time to edit basically a feature-length documentary story, that's when I met Eric, Mr. Eric Weinrib, who I'll pass the baton to him.
Yeah, I got to do everything while Nate was filming the band for 20 years. Nate pitched the project to Beverly Chase, who I've made documentaries with for nearly a decade, and Bev knew I loved music and that I also loved making documentaries and thought Nate and I should meet. And we did, and we did there were a couple more shoots after I came on board. And we sort of were complementary because Nate had been living in this footage and this scene for 20 years, and I had more of sort of an outsider, like bird's eye perspective. So I could help answer questions that I had as sort of like a casual viewer that Nate didn't have because he knew very well. And I also want to thank the audience. We always thank the audience for coming because we spend a lot of time in dark rooms making this, hoping that you'll enjoy it. So it was a thrill and an honor to hear your laughter as you watched it today, to see your tears and to just feel the general energy in your home.
The energy was palpable.
It seemed very appropriate for a Gogol Bordello documentary. But the audience is another instrument in a way. What was the kind of process like as you kind of work through these many hours of footage, in the sense that, like, did you know the kind of thematic story that you wanted to make, or was that kind of informed as you started digging through the footage?
I think
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, Nate had given us a huge head start because he had several reels that were, hours long each, and he knew where all the best footage was. He knew what he had. But some of the focus on the previous footage changed when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine happened, and there was an increased urgency to tell this band's story now. because Eugene is from Ukraine, and his experience of being from Ukraine has always been a part of his music and his performances. So I think going back to the 20 years of footage and finding the bits and pieces that helped us to tell that story that sadly emerged in reality, is sort of a discovery that Nate and I were able to have together.
Yeah, I'll add to that the full-scale invasion, added an urgency to finish the project and not keep working on it for another couple decades. And Eugene had a friend that was in the Ukrainian army, and he had a connection with a military orchestra. And that orchestra invited Gogol Bordello to come to Ukraine to play a concert with the orchestra in sort of solidarity, as sort of like a morale boosting like event for the troops. So Eugene called me one day and was like, "Yo, Nate, we got to go to Ukraine to get this this concert. You think it'd make a good scene in the movie?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So that that became kind of like the capstone a little bit. Like it's a kind of a climactic scene in the movie when that concert actually happens for the soldiers, and it's also sort of our setup, and is sort of a full circle kind of narrative in the sense that the movie tells the story of Eugene's immigration in the United States and his return to Ukraine, in support and solidarity of his homeland.
Well, and I guess it raises a question. Not every documentary needs to be like a cause film, or a call to action film. But in some ways, obviously there's that layer now in the film, and so like when we leave the theater or once we start watching, finishing the film, what do you think either yourselves or Eugene would want us to kind of take away in relationship to like what's going on in Ukraine? Do you think?
I say one quick anecdote from me is when we left our screening at the Warsaw International Film Festival, something happened that has happened at many of our screenings, is that one audience member was waiting behind, sobbing, just by herself, not looking for us or anything. And we walked up and we said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yes." Her whole life has grown up in a small town in Poland where it's very traditional and the music is very traditional. And watching this movie, she realized for the first time in her life that she can take those traditions and turn them on their ears and make something new of it that she and her friends could understand, and that she was going to go home and start a band and do it. And it's
That's
just
pretty
like
awesome.
something that emotion after the screening is something that has been completely unpredictable and also completely consistent. So for me, to answer your question, I hope that that young woman went home and started a band.
I think the most important takeaway from the film is sort of the larger discussion that can be had about immigration and immigrants and how they enrich the cultures that they immigrate to. And Eugene is a Ukrainian immigrant, and Ukraine is, an urgent situation at the moment. But there's a larger story in this, there's a larger story that this movie tells about the immigrant experience. And our hope is that people that see this film come away with more compassion for immigrants in general, and what they go through to leave the countries they're from and go and find a new home. And that's that's a story that almost everybody in the band shares. And we, routinely after our screenings, talk to fans, talk to audience members who, say that, I had a similar refugee experience, or my parents had a similar refugee experience, or my grandparents had a refugee experience like this. So yeah, the more compassion we can sort of, direct towards immigrants and refugees, that's ultimately the goal of our film.
Word up on both fronts. Given the kind of the nature of the filming with, over the 2 decades, was there kind of an aesthetic approach that you kind of tried to bring over throughout time, or did it kind of evolve based on the changing nature of just shooting situations and, their lives?
You mean like visually, like technically?
Visually, was it more like, would you say like, did it kind of more evolve in the editing room, or was it something that like from the beginning, that you just tried to kind of carry over the way that you were kind of shooting these different kind of situations over the years?
I'd say it's all over the place. There's an intention to kind of keep things consistent, in the fact that a lot of the footage, with single cameras, me with a single camera shooting it. So, whatever sort of my camera work style was maybe the only consistent thing. But I mean, the film was shot on, I don't know, more than 25 different cameras over 20 years, edited, bit by bit, over a long time. So I would say it has a very melting pot kind of style, which works for the subject matter.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of intentional because, that's what's going to happen when you shoot on so many different cameras and take so long to make something. But the band itself is a real hodgepodge of influences and styles as well. So we felt like that kind of worked. Eric, what do you think? And certainly trying to dial in in final edit, dial in the consistency as much as possible, but it really is all over the place.
That Nate's ability to play his camera like a musical instrument improved over time, just like any musician practicing playing an instrument. So sort of like I noticed that the choreography of the camera on the stage and its moves, sort of in synchronization with the band or in relation to the band, became more and more fine-tuned as Nate went on, in my opinion.
Oh, thanks, Eric.
It has a cool collage feel about it. In addition to the invasion of Ukraine, was there anything that kind of most surprised you during the making of the film? And particularly, I guess, as you started getting in the editing room, of things that you reflected on that maybe when you first started shooting, Nate or Eric, that you just didn't expect and that were kind of enlightening in a certain way.
I mean, my relationship with Eugene and with members of the band is something that, started as a fan and became a friend, and over the years really felt like I became part of their family, this adopted family kind of thing. So I guess getting to the point with them, just personally speaking, was really enriching. Maybe not surprising.
Yeah.
But rewarding and enriching.
I was always like, "Where's the shit you're hiding, Nate? Show me, give me the goods."
Yeah.
Well, it's really cool, epic journey, and the thing I always try to remind our audiences here, we're lucky enough that filmmakers like you all share their films early in their life cycle, and then our job for the films we like is to kind of go out there and become your grassroots street team, whether it be talking about it over drinks at the backyard barbecue next week or, at work, but also on social media. So what's the best way to kind of help kind of amplify the voice of this independent film and get people to kind of say, hey, I want a screening in my own town, or even follow your own creative efforts?
I would say following the Instagram. The Instagram is very active, and all developments with the film are posted there. And if people want to post, even if they're watching it in their home at your festival, if they want to take a shot right now of the three of us, 3, 2, 1, and tag Scream of My Blood, we would love to post it. We appreciate the support, and anything you do help get the word out. It's great by us and great by the band, and hopefully great by immigrants everywhere, which, by the way, in the United States includes white Europeans.
Yeah. Well, very cool, guys. Well, thanks again for making the film, and just really appreciate you being part of SF Doc Fest.
Thank you. Thank you, SF Doc Fest.
Also, Nate wasn't hiding anything.